Hey everyone, welcome to Girls Can, a series of podcasts created to help educate and inform young women throughout the world.
Our goal is to empower and inspire the next generation because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.
Hi everyone, I'm Grace Swain. I'm sitting here with my sister Elizabeth. Elizabeth, why don't you tell us about who we have in the studio today?
We are interviewing Mrs. Shelby Mitchell today. Mrs. Mitchell is a radio personality on the Dan and Shelby Show on 95 KSJ iHeart Radio, NBC 15, the Broadcast Podcast, the Grab Bag Podcast, and Cocktail Hour. This is Mrs. Mitchell's 20th year on 95 KSJ. Recently, Mrs. Mitchell was voted as the Lagniappe Reader's Choice Best Local DJ and a member of the Best DJ team with her co-host, Dan Brennan. A graduate of the University of South Alabama and a Mobile native, Mrs. Mitchell will share with us the key to entertaining large groups while discussing the importance of media, music, and conversation. Mrs. Mitchell, how did you become interested in pursuing a career in radio?
Well, I first wanted to be in television. And that was my first desire. And I interned here locally at WKRG when it was AM, FM, and TV. It was a long time ago. And I created my own internship in 3 different areas. And so I figured out kind of throughout that internship that I would much rather play music and have fun and kind of talk about what I wanted to talk about rather than do a depressing news story. And have like 2 minutes maximum to, have the package together and ready. That internship showed me that I really wanted to be in radio.
What kind of internship was it?
Well, it was pretty fun because I went to the dean at University of South Alabama and I went to the bosses at the TV and radio station. And I actually started my own internships, one in AM radio, which is, on the AM dial, very old school, and then FM radio. And then television. So I actually did 3 different internships in the field of communications.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Miss Mitchell, how did you get where you are today?
Okay. So back to the internships. I did internships, like I said, under the umbrella of WKRG, AM, FM, and TV. And then I moved to, long story short, moved to Mississippi and did some radio there at an independently owned station where you kind of have to do everything. And so they say, cut your teeth. I cut my teeth and learned everything that you had to learn at that station in Mississippi. And then I went to Florida and did a little bit of more of what I learned there. And then when 95 KSJ asked me to come back home, which I was one of those that said I would never come back to Mobile. Never say never, kids. It was the best decision I've ever made. And now this is my 20th year at 95 KSJ.
Wow. What is your favorite part of the job? And what is your least favorite part of the job?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm one of those, I get up every day and I love my job. For instance, the other day, we got to do a live broadcast. I was literally 10 feet away from a pier and the sound side of the Gulf of Mexico. We were at Dauphin Island and we were there for the fishing rodeo. So, how cool is it that our office is outside and we get to talk on the radio and talk about the cool things that people were doing with this fishing tournament? I love being able to do that. And I also love live music. I always have. So I love being able to go to concerts. And when we do a big concert, like for instance, down at the wharf, we'll set up our big tent and our big giant trailer and a speaker and people will come up and say hello and register for prizes. And then we get to take special winners backstage or side stage, or we get to do a special meet and greet, with some of the artists, before they do the show. That's really cool. And then I get to go be in the audience and listen to the show. And my radio partner, Dan, teases me and he says, it's like the first show that you've ever been to. You stand in the crowd and you pump your fist and sing along. I'm like, yeah. So I love live music. That's my favorite part. Now, my least favorite part of the job, which, even if you have the best job in the world, the very best job in the world, there's going to be something that you don't love about it. It's just one of those things. It's life. Doing the same thing over and over for as many years. Now, we have had a lot of changes, and that's cool, and I can go with the flow and change, but sometimes things tend to be repetitious. And you have to reinvent yourself, and you have to find a new way of looking through different eyes, even though they're your own eyes, to kind of, keep it fresh. That sometimes can be a challenge. The part that I don't like now in my job, we have a lot of clients. We have advertisers. That's what pays our bill. That's what keeps us on the air. And sometimes if you have someone who is a very last minute advertiser, now they're very important to you, but they ask you to do something or change a word or change a sentence or do something they want to right now, right this minute. And sometimes that is a challenge because it's very important. We need their business. We need their money. And I want to provide them a service that I say, yes, I can provide you. But that to me, a late turnaround or a last minute turnaround is kind of challenging.
You're right. You mentioned Dan, and you have a show called Dan and Shelby. And so tell us a little bit about the relationship between you and your working partner. How do you work so closely with someone?
Well, and I'll tell you, it's funny because it's kind of like a marriage. We joke and say, oh, it's my radio husband. I actually have a real husband that I am married to, and he has a real wife, but it's just a term. He's my radio partner, and we spend more time with each other than we do our own spouses and families because it's just the job. But we are connected at the hip. We don't go into different cubicles and do our work. We have to work together every single day. Now, we did a morning show called The Breakfast Club for many, many years. And then when a syndicated morning show came in, we were able to go to the afternoon and do our show, the Dan and Shelby show in the afternoon now, which we've now been going on 2 years. But altogether, we've been together, working together for about 18 years. Wow. It's as long as you've been alive.
You're right.
So you have to have those conversations. You have to get along. There's some things you just have to do a give and take. And you just have to accept things like his gifts are this part, doing the editing, running the board, making sure we're on time, making sure the song is playing, da-da-da-da. My gifts are more some of the detailed stuff. Sometimes, content. We both bring great content to the show. He has a great story. I have a great story. We both kind of have the same gifts, but we know what we're better at, and we just have to go with the flow. If we have a problem, and yes, we've had fights before, but you have to communicate just like you would with your sisters, just like you would with a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. You have to say, okay, I'm approaching this, with positivity, but I need help with this. And you have to work it out. You have to talk about it.
Right.
Yep.
What is your favorite song?
Oh, Lord. I have a lot of songs. Oh my gosh. Probably one of my all-time favorites. And it's funny because we don't play her that much anymore on the radio. Now, not to say there's a lot of stars and artists that don't necessarily get played on the radio that are still really good, and they have other platforms too. Mm-hmm. And this is back, I guess it just reminds me of when I was, young and there weren't many women on the radio and I was kind of up and coming, but the Shania Twain,
yes.
Man, I Feel Like a Woman. That's probably one of my favorites.
I used to listen to that all the time.
You did?
When we were little, we had a babysitter and we used to make CDs. And that was one of the songs on the CD. And we'd drive down the road and we had that song blaring on the speakers.
Perfect. See, that goes right along with Girls Can, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites. We could be here all day if I had to pick others, but I'll go ahead and stick with that one.
Do you have a favorite story from being on the radio?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. I will tell you, one of the coolest things I ever did was fly with the Blue Angels. Wow. Now, not necessarily with them during their air show, but they have an airplane. I don't know if it was a F-18 or an F-16 at the time. They pick one person from the media every time they do a show. And the day before they do their show, they say, okay, media person, come over here. There's a 2-seater special airplane that they fly guests in, and they'll go up and they'll take you and they'll do the maneuvers that sometimes they do during the show with one pilot. So I went up with the one pilot, and he has a list of maneuvers, and he would do the maneuver. Well, let me back up. You have to go into this training for a day. They teach you how to breathe, because most people, when they go up and they go through these maneuvers, they'll either pass out or throw up. And so I was like, I don't want to do either one of those. So anyway, we go up into the airplane, and he takes off, and it is so cool. It's amazing. I've never done anything like it, and I never will again. And that's why each time he would do a maneuver, I'd take the little bag. I was like, yes, I had to throw up. And then he'd do another maneuver, and I had to throw up again. And finally he goes, you know what? I don't want to do these anymore, because you're not handling
these maneuvers.
Well, like you're pulling G's. I mean, you're spinning so fast. You're doing like spins and barrel rolls, and it's like being on a ride at Universal or Disney, except to the nth, power. It's crazy. And that's why some people pass out unless you breathe properly. Or, like me, throw up. So finally he said, I'm going to change what we're doing. I'm not going to do the spinning stuff, because I want you to enjoy this. I said, okay. So aside from that part, it was the coolest thing I've ever done connected to radio, ever.
Wow. It seems really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
So is there a book that you recommend for high school girls to read?
And I did glance at that question. That's kind of a tough one, because I have a 12-year-old, my bonus son. He's my stepson. And so I was going to look at some or maybe talk to some friends, but really I wanted to, kind of relay what I have read and what I've related to, which aren't many, except I do think that Hunger Games is a good one because of the strong central female character. And she represents what's good. And she goes through challenges, and she's a heck of an archer.
Exactly.
So I think that's maybe that's what junior high, kids are reading, but I think every young lady should read something along those lines. And there's also another one I'm thinking, but I don't even know if this is on any list anymore, but Little House on the Prairie. That's what I read when I was little. And I'm telling you what, just learning the strength of some of these pioneer women, it's pretty cool, and it's very eye-opening.
Going through your career, do you have any advice you would give for a high school girl?
There are challenges, and you're going to have challenges. And some of them could be, within your building. Some of them could be a personal challenge that might affect your job. But what you have to do is you just have to stay strong, move forward, take a breath before you make any decisions. And that's the biggest thing, because I used to be one of those people that would just kind of knee-jerk reaction and do something or think something or decide something. Not that it was necessarily the wrong decision, because no decision is wrong. I think when you make the decision, you're making it for a reason. So at the time, it's right. But if you don't give yourself enough time to just pause and think and take a breather and say, really think about what you're doing, then sometimes you can be impulsive, and that might yield some negative consequences. So just think about what you're doing, before you go forward. Really think. And I do think if you stay true to yourself, and that might sound cliche, but you really have to, okay, what am I all about? What do I represent? What are my morals? What do I believe in? What's my passion? And you have to stick with that. Don't just flip-flop on something because, your boss likes this, so I'm going to be this now. Right. Or even your boyfriend, you're an Alabama fan, but he likes Auburn, so I'm going to be Auburn just because your boyfriend, is an Auburn fan because you want to impress him. Don't do that. Stick to what is inside you. Decide what you want to be about and stick to that.
Real Tide.
You go, girl.
What are some challenges that you faced throughout your career?
One of the big challenges is technology itself changed and changed our career in radio, kind of turned it upside down. I mean, we used to be in a radio studio and everything was live. And when a song played, you had to play a long song so that you could go to the restroom if you needed to go take a break. Oh. Now we do have the ability to pre-record some stuff. And sometimes we do. Now, our show, Dan and I like to keep it as close to live as we can because we like it that way and we're there. So we may as well do the show live or like live. For instance, if, we're asked to go announce something or judge something, we might record the last 30 minutes of our show so we can go hit the road and go be at this event. That's kind of made things easier. But at first it was hard to learn. There's a lot of crazy things. It's like, what? And our company's iHeart. So it's like, you can listen to your own, make your own radio station. Well, but I want them to listen to my radio station, 95 KSJ. I thought, gosh, this is going to make DJs jobs go away. And then I'm, going to have to be on my butt and go find another job. But that was not the case. So there's a lot of technology and things that we had to deal with to move forward, but it actually ended up being a really good thing. Personally, you have your challenges of your coworkers, and you may or may not get along with them, and you have to get along with them. Or it might be a manager that you're unsure about, and you don't particularly, you don't know much about them, and you don't know their style, or you don't like their style. You've got to learn to pick your battles. Mm-hmm. You got to learn to go with the flow, and who's important, who's writing your check based on, are they, going on top of your values or doing something or saying something that you're not all about or you're not okay with. You have to be strong enough to speak up to that person, even if they're your boss or management or whatever. So those little things, I think you just have to, again, take a breath, think, and before you speak and say, okay, is this the right thing? And I'm not, overly churchy spiritual, but I'm a believer and I do pray. And, I'll just take a minute and breathe and think about it. Maybe throw up a little prayer. And then the next day, it'll come to me. Here's what I should do. Here's what I should say.
How are you able to communicate so well with other people? How do you put yourself out there?
I had to learn that. And actually, when I was a teenager, I worked in retail at a clothing store in the mall. And I don't know if, that to me, I was terrified at first. And then that gave me the confidence to just go up to talk to people because everybody has a story. And even if on their face you're not sure, if you just smile and you say hello and you say, what are you all about? Not that, but like in the store, I would be like, can I help you? If you just, approach everything with kind of openness and smile, they'll smile back 9 times out of 10. And they'll let you know, you can kind of get a hint of what's going on in their life, whether it be you're selling them clothes or you are approaching them to buy advertising.
Have you met someone through radio that you would not have met otherwise?
Yes. It's been a long time ago. They selected 5 country radio stations throughout the whole entire United States to come. They flew us to Dallas, Texas in some big fancy hotel to have a 30-minute interview with Kenny Chesney.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was really, really cool. So Dan and I were selected and we got to sit down with Kenny Chesney and ask him whatever we wanted to for 30 minutes. And
I would
back
be like
then,
fangirl. Be like,
yes. Oh, trust me. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I was stuttering and couldn't talk. And I like had to kick Dan to ask the questions. And you know what happened? And I'll never forget this. We had equipment failure about 20 minutes into it. Oh,
no.
And as a radio person and podcast people, we have to depend on our equipment. And oh my gosh, I was so livid, but you had, see, once again,
all the time.
Yes, you can't blow up and, it's not Kenny Chesney's fault. We just had to say, oh, I'm sorry, Kenny. We're really having an issue with our equipment. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the interview now. I was so embarrassed. But aside from that part, it was really cool to be able to do that. 2 years ago, we got to go, me and my husband, Dan and his wife, and a couple of other radio people, just 6 people, got to sit 30 minutes with Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood. Yes, in the green room before his concert was it New Orleans or Biloxi? New Orleans, I think.
My dad loves Garth Brooks.
Let me tell you
he
what.
Loves him so much.
Me too. He's one of my favorites too. And he's like a super, super, superstar. So we got to sit and ask him. And what's funny is Trisha Yearwood is also a great star, but she has her TV cooking show and she has these cookbooks. Well, my husband is a foodie, which means he likes to cook and stuff. So he's like mesmerized with Trisha Yearwood and he's asking her all about these recipes and stuff. So that was fun.
What did you ask them?
What big stars like the most is to be reminded that they're regular people. So we're like, how are the kids? How you doing? Are you nervous about playing tonight? And Garth Brooks said, no. I couldn't believe it. And that was one of those nights where he was playing twice, 2 different shows. I said, Garth, come on. You're no, spring chicken. How are you staying awake for this second show? And he was like, maybe some Red Bull and coffee or whatever. But he said, he was pumped up to go. So just talking, recipes and talking about kids and dogs and stuff. They like that.
Cool.
Who inspires you?
My mom, God rest her soul. She's been gone for a few years now, but she was an inspiration. She didn't know it. She was very strong, kind of bullheaded and stubborn, which is where I get some of it. But she was a nurse and just didn't stop, did not give up. She was like the Energizer Bunny. So, and I always think about, what she wanted for me. She always wanted me to do something that I love, and I am. So, and what's funny is there's a lady who trained me, and she still works with me now. She's my coworker, and she's one of my co-hosts on the Broadcast podcast, which I produce. Her name is Mary Booth. And she still works and works and works her tail off. And that woman, she has grown children now, and she comes in every day, and she loves her job. At least she acts like she does. But just watching her, she's one of my inspirations. And probably on a large level, I would say someone, I loved literature, and I still do. I don't have time I would love to go back and study and read like what we did in college. But Maya Angelou had some really beautiful lines and beautiful, just positive poetry, and some of her prose as well. So she's another one I look up to.
You mentioned that you have a stepson and you also are married. How do you balance work with other aspects of your life?
That's a tough one because for many years, my work was my baby, and I made that choice, and I love it. And I don't regret it at all. Here's the thing. I married a fireman. The fireman has a crazy schedule. I have a crazy schedule, and I knew when I marry someone for the second time and last time, this one was going to be someone who understood my schedule and understood my life and understood that I can't be home and be the person that has dinner ready at 5 o'clock every night. It's just not going to happen. And that was okay because he had the same crazy schedule too. And then when the stepson, who I call my bonus son, he, came with the package as well. We just make it work. The good thing is with radio and being in the media and what I do, I have a built-in social schedule. We get to do fun stuff at the wharf. Well, guess what? If we're at the wharf and I'm doing a broadcast, my husband and my stepson can come down and ride the Ferris wheel and go do fun stuff or whatever while I'm doing my work part. Then we all go to the concert together. So you really do have to make it work, and you have to balance it out. And if you're really tired, sometimes, again, you have to do, the Garth Brooks Red Bull every once in a while. I don't suggest it all the time, but that's something I had to learn. There were a lot of times where I was doing a lot of work and not enough family. And you just have to take a step back and you have to make that adjustment.
Which award that you've won is your favorite?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think probably I'm going to say you may or may not have seen this on my bio, but Dan and I have been nominated several times for CMA Awards and ACM Awards, which is Country Music Association and Academy of Country Music. There's also an award called the CRB, Country Radio Broadcasters. We won that a long time ago. It's time to win it again. But we got to go to Nashville and walk across a stage with hundreds of our peers, people in radio, country radio, all over the nation, got to see us accept this award. We had people who are way up who've heard many, many, many DJs and listened to many shows and been part of many shows. They judged us and it was tough, but we won that award.
Wow.
So I'm probably more proud of that one. That one's been from a long time ago, but probably more proud of that one than any. But I do love, all the ones for the readers of the Nappies and of anything local. We really appreciate that they are still listening to us and we've been around such a long time, so we appreciate really any awards that we get.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Miss Mitchell, because you were in the public eye so much, it seems like you always have to be Shelby, not just yourself. What are the positives and negatives of being such a large public figure in that age of social media?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I love social media. I really do. And you have to grasp it. You have to go with the flow now. You have to be on social media, which is good. I love it. It has helped because there's a lot of times if I'm not on the radio at that moment, I could still highlight something or somebody. I could go to a client and say, hey, I'm here with the boot store in Daphne and look, here's my favorite boots. Well, I can't do that on the radio, obviously. So it really adds an entire platform of being able to do fun stuff like that. The downside is, everybody's on social media and everyone has to be beautiful. And when you're over 40, it's tough. That's a challenge for me personally. But sometimes I don't care. Sometimes it's like, okay, it is what it is and I'm having fun. But you kind of do always have to be on. You do. And there are some days if I'm not on, guess what? I don't even pick up my phone. Like on the weekends, if it's time to chill out, I have to literally power down. And that's hard to do because I'm like everybody else. I'm kind of addicted to my phone, but you have to kind of get away from that. And I do go to regular yoga and meditation and, church. And I have to, close my eyes and get away from all of it to kind of focus back on myself so that I can be charged up to be Shelby once again. And being Shelby's not too bad, but yeah, sometimes, you have that smile and you're like, yay, gung ho. And you don't feel like it 100%. That's kind of tough sometimes, but then, you just you talk yourself into it. Like if I know I've got an appointment to be somewhere and I have to do social media with someone, then I'm usually looking forward to it. But there's pluses and minuses in social media. And I did want to pass along, for young girls, this is something I meant to also pass along when, Grace asked me about advice to give to high school girls. With social media, put your phones down. Try to please have conversations with people because you learn how to read a room. And that phrase means you can read what's going on. You can read someone's body language. You can read their eyes. You can't do that through a text message or any kind of a messaging. Right. It really will help you to put down your phones and make that human contact and speak to people right to their faces.
I have one last question. I was reading on your bio and you were a watermelon queen.
Yes.
What is that about?
Well, in Grand Bay, they have the Grand Bay Watermelon Festival and they have a pageant that goes along with it. And in 1980 something, I was the second runner-up. The runner-up to the runner-up. We had a, ball gown and, we had an interview portion of it. And I did, well enough to get the runner-up to the runner-up, which is actually third place. I was okay with that. We got to meet the governor. We got to give out watermelon at the rest areas and grocery stores and, got to go to a dance and got to host a few things. This is way back in the day, but yep. So, my hometown is Grand Bay, Alabama, and I'm proud. And that's where that came from. And they still have watermelon queens from Grand Bay.
Really?
Yes, they do.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. We learned so much from you, and we know our audience will too.
Well, thank you. And I want to say kudos and hats off to you guys for doing, or you ladies, for doing what you do. I think it's awesome. I think we have a lot of strong, empowering women nowadays, and you guys are leading the way, and I'm glad to know you. And maybe one day you can come in and be on our broadcast podcast with our ladies.
Yes, we would love that. Definitely.
Right. Thank you.
Shelby, thank you so much for coming in today. We learned so much. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
We know you're on KSJ every single day, but how are there other ways to get in touch with you?
Okay, yeah. We're on 95 KSJ, like you mentioned, Monday through Friday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. But you can also hear our podcasts. I produce 2 of them, and one is called the Broadcast Podcast. Me and 3 other ladies that are in our building, 3 other DJs. We're all different ages and come from different genres of music and different colors and sizes. And so that's called the Broadcast Podcast. And you can hear that on the free iHeartRadio app, also on iTunes. And the second podcast that I produce is with Dan Brennan, and it's called Dan and Shelby Off the Mic. And you can also hear that on the free iHeartRadio app as well as iTunes. And I believe it's on Spotify. I'm not sure at this point. So that's how you can hear me. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can just go to 95ksj.com and click the Dan and Shelby page. And you can look me up on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, it's Shelby Mitchell, or Shelby Mitchell 95 KSJ. On Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat, it's Shelby Radio Chick. All the ways you can get in touch with me are right there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Girls Can, a podcast and an organization dedicated to improving the lives of young women in our community.
We want to encourage young women to make a difference through education and service.
Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow. Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.